Persian Gulf, northwest of the Strait of Hormuz. March 7, 2026, daytime from 1340 local time. Coordinates: 38 km off the Iranian coast, northeast of Qeshm Island. Depth 38 to 55 m. Underwater visibility 4 to 7 m. Light haze of silt and oily residue from recent fires. March 7th was hot and blinding. The sun set almost overhead, turning the surface of the strait into a mirror of liquid metal. A U.S. task force was moving through a narrow corridor, covering the withdrawal of the damaged aircraft carrier USS Gerald R. Ford. 10 miles ahead of the main group sailed the flagship destroyer USS Zumwalt, DDG-1000, the lead ship of most expensive and technologically ambitious class in U.S. Navy history. The cost of a single Zumwalt exceeded $4.4 billion. Stealth shaping, a radar signature smaller than a fishing trawler's, 80 Mk-57 VLSLs, two 155mm AGS guns with an advertised range of 83 miles, speed over 30 knots, a crew of just 147. The ship held course 210 degrees at 20 knots, with SPY, 3 radar and /SQS, 53C sonar running at low power to avoid giving away its presence. Iran, having lost its surface fleet and an entire carrier group confrontation, had shifted to a last-strike tactic. The submarine Fateh, a newer diesel-electric boat of the Fateh class, built in 2024, about 590-ton surface/700-ton submerged, 48 meters long, up to 14 knots on batteries, had been stalking the strait for 5 days. On board, 35 crew for 533mm torpedo tubes. Torpedoes were not to be used. The order was strict: ramming. The commander, Captain Second Rank Amir Hossein Rezai, 38, lean, hard-eyed, with a scar through his left eyebrow, hadn't slept properly in 80 hours, yet his gaze burned with cold fanaticism. 1340. Sonar operator Senior Seaman Ali Rezai snapped his hand up in the dim light of control room. Contact, bearing 285 degrees. Heavy prop noise from a large group. Signature consistent with a stealth-class destroyer. Range 5,200 meters. It's him, Zumwalt. Course 210 degrees, speed 20 knots. Escorts left and right, but straight ahead, clean corridor. Water under target's keel, 46 meters. Ideal for a ram. Captain Rezai leaned over the chart. The strait here narrowed to 3.8 miles, squeezed between mine zones and the Iranian coast. Zumwalt sailed confidently, not expecting an underwater threat in exactly this spot. Its escort sonars were tuned for longer-range contacts, while Fateh moved at minimum speed, nearly silent, riding inertia and a faint battery current. The quiet was almost absolute. Depth 44 meters. Closing to 1,200 meters. Prepare to ram. Hit the stern, under the starboard shaft and the foundations. This is our only chance. If we miss, they'll tear us apart in seconds. Rezai's voice was low but iron steady. The crew froze. No one wasted words. Only masked breathing, the saw from a life support, and the occasional click of sonar. The submarine crept up to 32 meters. Deep enough to strike the destroyer's underside, shallow enough to avoid broaching the surface. 1355. Range fell to 1,800 meters. Fateh settled precisely onto an intercept course. The captain gave the order. All ahead, full on batteries. Maximum speed, 13.5 knots. Ram the stern, under the starboard shaft and Mk-57. After impact, emergency dive to max depth and brake southeast. If it fails, everyone to the escape capsules. God be with us, brothers. The motors growled softly. The submarine surged forward. On the American side, the escort sonar finally caught an anomaly, but too late. Fateh was already in the dead zone beneath Zumwalt's keel. 1402. On Zumwalt's bridge, the /SQS, 53C alarm screamed. Subsurface contact. Close. Bearing 180 degrees. Range for 150 meters. It's a submarine. It's ramming. Shallow. Zumwalt's commanding officer, Captain Eric Shepard, barked. Hard right. Full power. Launch Mark 54. Air defense, max readiness. This isn't a decoy, but the seconds were gone. 14:03. Fateh slammed into Zumwalt's stern at a 45 degrees angle. The submarine's bow crumpled like an accordion, but 700 tons at 13.5 knots delivered a kinetic blow equivalent to roughly 600 to 700 kilograms of TNT. The destroyer's hull buckled inward by 2 to 2.5 meters. Bulkheads and aft machinery spaces number 4 and number 5 ruptured. The starboard shaft jammed and tore free of its mounts. The rudders sheared off completely. One of the Mk-57 cells took the hit, triggering a tomahawk detonation inside the launcher and a chain reaction into adjacent cells. The blast ripped the stern open for 15 to 18 meters. Zumwalt's integrated propulsion suffered catastrophic damage at the foundations. Automatic protection tripped, but not before fuel lines burst and fire rolled through the aft machinery space. Water poured in through torn seams. The ship began to heel to starboard. On deck, sailors felt the 15,000-ton warship shudder as if struck by a giant battering ram. Lights flickered. Klaxons howled. Underwater impact. Hull breach. Flooding aft compartments. Damage control teams. Move. Reactor number 2, casualty. Fateh recoiled downward with a massive rupture in its bow and began to sink fast. Gripping a rail, Captain Razai gave his final order. Everyone to the escape capsules. We did what we had to. Allahu Akbar. Of the 35 aboard, only 8 survived, picked up by Iranian fast boats 18 minutes later under a smoke screen. 14:05. Aboard Zumwalt, chaos. The stern listed to 18 degree. Speed dropped to 0 knots. The ship began a slow starboard swing on inertia. Overheating spiraled. Automation initiated emergency pressure relief. Damage control teams in full protective gear fought fires aft, but flooding hit generators, switchboards, and the damaged VLS area. The deck trembled. In the MH-60R hangar, equipment shifted. Several technicians were badly injured by falls and impacts. Captain Shepard shouted into satellite comms. CENTCOM, this is Zumwalt. Submarine ram. Aft damage is catastrophic. Reactor number 2 casualty. List 18 degrees, 0 speed. Rudders gone. Explosion in Mk-57. We're losing buoyancy. Request immediate crew evacuation. Rescue helos and a tug. Casualties unknown. 14:12. The list reached 24 degrees. The stern settled 3.5 meters. Water was already flooding the hangar and parts of the upper deck. The crew began evacuating forward and into life rafts. Of 147, 29 were dead impact, flooding, explosion, burns, and 68 were wounded, fractures, blast injuries, smoke inhalation. The ship rolled onto its starboard side and began to sink stern first. 8 minutes after the ram, the stern vanished beneath the surface. The bow held for 4 more minutes. Then it too slipped under with a groaning scream of metal. 14:25. USS Michael Monser arrived at flank speed, but it was too late. Where Zumwalt had been, there was only a broad burning slick, rising bubbles and debris. Rescue helicopters from Ford lifted 50 survivors from the water. The rest died inside the ship. 14:45. Iranian state television broke in with an emergency broadcast. On screen, a satellite image of the burning patch in drone footage. The Fateh submarine heroically rammed and destroyed the American destroyer Zumwalt, worth $4.4 billion. This is revenge for our blood, for Shai Bagheri, for Al Dafra. A small submarine broke the Empire's spine. The Strait of Hormuz is ours, and we will defend it to the end. In Tehran, Hossein Salami watched the satellite images of the sinking Zumwalt and said quietly, "Now they know, even their ghosts can drown. This isn't the end. It's only the beginning of their nightmare." The waters of the strait still churned over the wreck site. Zumwalt, the most expensive, most advanced destroyer ever built, went to the bottom in 22 minutes. One strike by a 700-ton submarine and a $4.4 billion ship became twisted metal on a 52-meter seabed. The crew of Michael Monsoor and the rest of the task force held position, but everyone understood it wasn't over. It was a signal that Iran was ready to play to the end, and that the next strike would be even worse.